We're all familiar with the sight of an ambulance battling to respond to a call as quickly as is safely possible. But statistics show that at least one road traffic collision that happens each day will involve an ambulance. It's a simple reflex action when getting into a family car to grab our seatbelt and click it into place. However, after speaking to ambulance staff across the country, it's become clear that many people are neglecting to use all the required restraints when travelling in the back of an ambulance, and that's a real concern. We all have a responsibility as an organisation to keep our colleagues and patients safe in the back when travelling in an ambulance, and we need to manage this risk together. You can see from this footage that a collision can have devastating effects, but even minor bumps and braking can result in anyone unsecured being thrown around in the back. Some really eye-opening footage. After viewing this, I got to talk to Jason Killens, CEO of the Welsh Ambulance Service NHS Trust, about correct procedure when belting up in the back of an ambulance.
The crew should always be making sure that they and their patients are safely secured using the belts provided. The driver particularly should make sure that they and patients and their crewmate are safely secured before moving off, and they shouldn't be afraid to challenge their colleagues if they're not wearing their seatbelts.
It is essential for the person driving the ambulance to check that everyone in the back is belted up before they start driving.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Are you belted up?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Good.
In some cases, you may need to challenge a colleague who doesn't see belting up in the back as necessary or may be counterproductive when potentially needing to treat a patient. You shouldn't feel uncomfortable questioning or challenging this sort of behaviour, even when dealing with a more senior colleague. So that's the official line on belting up. We've seen the crash footage, and an ambulance involved in a collision where passengers aren't belted up can cause a lot of pain and regret.
I was in the back with my patient when our ambulance crashed, and now I've been robbed of my job. I wasn't wearing my seatbelt at the time of the crash, and as a result I've had life-changing injuries, which has meant I've been unable to continue as a paramedic. I wish that day had gone differently. It didn't even enter my mind of the risk I was putting myself and my patient in.
The accident that I was involved in was terrible. I should have used the 5-point harness to fully secure my patient. I didn't, and my patient was killed in the crash. So please make sure your patient is securely strapped in. I'm having to live with the result of my actions, and I don't want others to have to feel this way.
You really don't think it's going to happen until it happens to you. We were travelling at 30 miles per hour and only 3 minutes away from the hospital when some pedestrians stepped out in front of the ambulance. The driver had to brake hard, and we didn't actually crash, but I was thrown forwards into the cab. When I look back, I didn't even need to get up to care for the patient while we were travelling. I could have done what was needed before we set off, or I should have just asked my crewmate to pull over so I could do it safely.
It's not just about your own safety. You need to look out for your colleagues too. Remind them to belt up if they forget, and make sure that the patients are securely belted into their stretcher before travelling. So John, we've heard from Jason about the correct procedure when belting up, but what about if you need to leave your seat to tend to a patient?
So when we learn to be paramedics, we're often thinking about balancing risk, and we're also importantly thinking about not doing harm to our patients or to ourselves. So really important that we put our seatbelts on and put our seatbelts on our patients. But there are those occasions where the patient will deteriorate en route to hospital, and when we're thinking about that, here's my top tip. So first is preempt whether something might happen en route and think about it before you start driving to hospital. So is the patient likely to vomit? Get the vomit bowl out before you start leaving. Is your oxygen cylinder going to run out en route? Change it before you start driving. Are you going to need to give a second dose of a drug? Draw it up before you start the wheels moving. Put your seatbelts on and then go to hospital. But on those occasions where patients do deteriorate en route to hospital, first thing to think about is, can the driver safely pull over? Call through to the front, ask them to pull over. Only takes usually a minute, and then take your seatbelt off. And on those very rare occasions where you do need to do an immediate intervention, which will be good for the patient and will make sure that they don't come to harm, you will have to unstrap. And what you're doing is weighing up the risk of not doing that with the patient versus taking your seatbelt off. So just think carefully about when you've got your seatbelt on and when you might take it off, but it should be a very rare occasion if you think ahead.
Gav, can you pull over in a safe spot? It's just deteriorated.
We hope this video has helped you to see the importance of belting up in the back. Being safe in the back is as much about your safety as that of your patients. It's just like driving yourself and your family around in your own car. You must all be belted up. It's about duty of care, and it's also a legal requirement that anyone in the back of an ambulance is strapped in. Let's all work together to keep ourselves, our colleagues and our patients safe.